They say the devil hides his works in plain sight behind stone, beneath floorboards, in the belly of a woman no man will claim. The rope came at dawn. It wasn't the hanging kind. Not yet, but Mary Beth Carver knew the difference between mercy and delay. The hemp bit into her wrists as Sheriff Dalton pulled the knot tight, his tobacco-stained fingers avoiding her eyes. Around them, the town of Bitterroot Springs gathered like crows to carrion, women in faded calico with mouths pinched tight, men with their hats low, children peeking between legs and wagon wheels. Mary Beth Carver, Dalton's voice cracked across the morning cold, you stand accused of Congress with darkness, of bearing a child conceived in sin and sorcery, of bringing curse upon this town. The words hung in the air, visible almost, like the fog of her own breath. She was 6 months swollen. The baby moved inside her a flutter, a kick as if it too could hear the judgment being passed. Her dress, once blue, now hung gray and stained from 3 nights in the grain cellar they called a jail. Her dark hair, loose and tangled, fell across a face that hadn't yet reached 20 years. Blood crusted at the corner of her lip where Dalton's deputy had struck her for weeping. I ain't done nothing but survive, she said, voice low but steady. Survival? It was Eunice Colfax who spoke, the Reverend's wife, her face sharp as a hatchet. You were found in Abel Marsh's barn, alone, at night, with symbols carved into the dirt. I was sleeping, Mary Beth said. Abel's dead 3 months. No one else would give me shelter. And the symbols? Mary Beth's jaw tightened. I can't read nor write. I don't know no symbols. But she did know cold. She knew hunger. She knew the weight of a man's anger and the particular silence of women who looked away. 3 months back, when her belly first began to show and she wouldn't name the father, couldn't name him, not without destroying what little remained of her life, the town had turned its back. Work vanished, doors closed. Even the church, where she'd scrubbed floors since she was 12, cast her out. The truth was buried too deep. The father was Samuel Colfax, the Reverend's own son, who'd forced himself on her behind the livery stable and then ridden east with his father's blessing and a pocketful of gold. The well's gone bitter, someone shouted from the crowd. 3 foals born dead this month. My daughter won't stop screaming at night, another voice added. Dalton raised his hand. The law says we transport her to Silver Falls for trial, but the trail's washed out. Could be weeks. Weeks? Eunice's voice pitched high. While she poisons our town? Tie her, someone said. Brand her. Make her confess. The crowd's murmur rose like wind before a storm. Mary Beth felt her knees weaken, but she locked them straight. She would not fall. Not here. Not for them. Then, through the pressing bodies, a horse pushed forward, a scarred roan mare with a rider slouched in the saddle, hat brim low, duster coat dark with trail dust. That's far enough, the rider said. The voice was rough, female, and utterly unafraid. In the West, loyalty ain't measured by words, it's counted in the things a person risks losing. The rider was called Cole. Most folks had forgotten her given name was Catherine, forgotten she'd once worn skirts and sung hymns. That was before the Apache raid that took her husband and baby son, before she'd tracked the war party for 6 weeks and come back alone with blood under her nails and eyes like burnt-out stars. Now she wore men's clothes, kept her red hair cropped short beneath a flat-brimmed hat, and ran a failing cattle ranch at the edge of the valley where nothing grew but spite and sagebrush. She swung down from the roan, boots hitting dirt with purpose. This woman done something to you personal, Dalton? Cole's hand rested easy on the pistol at her hip. Not a threat, just a fact. The sheriff's mustache twitched. This ain't your concern, Cole. I'm making it my concern. Cole walked forward, the crowd parting like water. She stopped 3 feet from Mary Beth, Studying her, the rope burns, the swollen belly, the defiant tilt of her chin despite the fear swimming in her dark eyes. What's she done that needs rope and a mob before breakfast? Witchcraft. Eunice spat. Fornication. Bringing evil. Evil. Cole's laugh was dry as old leather. That what we're calling poverty now? Calling survival? She turned to face the crowd. I see a girl with no family, no husband, and no coin. I see vultures circling. Don't see much else. She was in Abel's barn with devil marks, a man called out. Abel's barn. Cole nodded slowly. Abel, who drank himself to death and hadn't cleaned his stalls in a year. Barn probably full of scratches and tracks from rats, coyotes, every damn varmint in the territory. That your devil marks? Silence, thick and uncertain. Cole pulled a knife from her belt. The crowd tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but she simply walked to Mary Beth and cut the rope binding her wrists. The hemp fell away, leaving angry red welts that looked like brands. She's coming with me, Cole said. Like hell, Dalton started. You got a legal warrant for her arrest? Cole's eyes were cold. Got a judge's signature? Or you just got a frightened mob looking for someone to blame because your wells are bitter and your luck's run thin? Dalton's hand hovered near his gun. The moment stretched taut. Then a child's voice cut through a small boy, no more than 6, tugging his mother's skirt. Mama, that lady gave me a biscuit once, when I was hungry. She ain't bad. The woman, thin, worn, looked down at her son, then up at Mary Beth. Something flickered in her face. Shame, maybe, or remembering. She didn't speak, but she stepped back, pulling her boy with her. It was enough. The crowd's certainty cracked. 2 weeks, Dalton finally said, his voice tight. I'm giving you 2 weeks, Cole. You keep her at your ranch. Don't let her run. Come trial time, you bring her to Silver Falls yourself, or I'll come for both of you. Fair enough. Cole gripped Mary Beth's elbow, not rough, but firm. Can you ride? Mary Beth nodded, not trusting her voice. They mounted together, Mary Beth behind Cole on the roan, her arms wrapped around the other woman's waist. As they turned to leave, Eunice Colfax's voice rang out, sharp with poison. You're damning yourself, Catherine Cole. Helping her damns your own soul. Cole looked back, her scarred face unreadable. Ma'am, I already been damned. Got nothing left to lose. Sometimes salvation hides where no one thinks to look behind ash and stone, in the places grief built walls. The ranch house squatted against the hills, like something trying to disappear. It was small, rough-timbered, with a sagging porch and windows that hadn't seen proper cleaning in seasons. Inside smelled of old smoke, leather, and loneliness. Cole helped Mary Beth down from the horse, steadying her when her legs buckled. The girl hadn't eaten proper in days. That much was clear from the way her collarbones jutted sharp beneath her dress. Sit, Cole said, nodding toward a wooden chair near the cold fireplace. While Mary Beth sank down, trembling with exhaustion and relief, Cole moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency. She lit the stove, put coffee on, sliced bread and hard cheese. Her hands were scarred, knuckles thick from breaking horses and mending fence alone. The cabin held ghosts, a child's wooden horse on the mantel, gathering dust, a man's coat still hanging by the door. Why'd you do it? Mary Beth asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Why help me? Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring at the coffee pot. Because I know what it's like when a town decides you're the reason for their troubles. When they need someone to hurt because they can't hurt the things that actually wound them: drought, disease, bad luck. She turned, her gray eyes meeting Mary Beth's. And because that boy was right, you ain't bad. Mary Beth's throat closed. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her and seen anything but shame. You can stay in the back room, Cole continued. It's small, but it's warm. 2 weeks ain't much time, but maybe we can figure something before trial. Maybe we can find who really, there's nothing to find. Mary Beth's voice came out flat. The father won't be named. Can't be named. And the symbols they found, I don't know what they were. I was just sleeping in that barn because nowhere else would take me. Cole studied her, then nodded. She knew about secrets that couldn't be spoken. She knew about truth that had nowhere safe to land. That first night, Mary Beth lay in the narrow bed in the back room, feeling the baby move beneath her ribs. Through the thin wall she heard Cole pacing, heard the clink of a whiskey bottle. Around midnight she heard something else, quiet, weeping, quickly stifled. The sound of a woman who'd learned to cry without making noise. 3 days passed. Cole showed her how to help with small tasks, shelling beans, mending tack, feeding the chickens that scratched in the dusty yard. Mary Beth's wrists healed slowly, the rope burns fading from angry red to dull purple. She slept heavily, her body finally allowed to rest, but her mind churned with fear. 2 weeks. Then Silver Falls. Then a trial she couldn't win and a rope that wouldn't miss twice. On the 4th night, restless and aching, Mary Beth rose and walked to the main room. The fire had burned down to coals. Cole was asleep in her chair, head tilted back, empty cup balanced on her knee. Mary Beth moved quietly toward the fireplace, thinking to build it back up, when her foot caught on something ablaze, loose hearthstone. She stumbled, caught herself. The stone had shifted. Beneath it, in the dim glow of the embers, she saw darkness, a gap. She knelt, pregnant belly making her clumsy, and worked the stone free. It lifted easier than it should have, revealing a space beneath, and behind that space, set into the chimney's foundation, was a door. Small, wooden, old, with an iron ring for a handle. Her heart hammered. She glanced back at Cole, still sleeping, then gripped the ring and pulled. The door opened on rusted hinges, revealing a crawl space that led back into darkness, cool air breathing out like a held secret finally released. The earth keeps what we bury: our shames, our losses, our truths too dangerous for daylight. Mary Beth's hands shook as she reached into the hidden space. Her fingers met cloth, first rough wool, bundled tight. She pulled it out carefully, the fabric releasing a smell of cedar and old earth. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She turned fast, heart slamming against her ribs, but it was only Cole, awake now, standing in the shadows with her arms crossed and her face unreadable. "Found it then," Cole said quietly. "I didn't mean to pry. The stone was loose and I know." Cole moved forward, knelt beside her. In the dying firelight, her face looked older, carved by grief into something both harder and more fragile than stone. "Been meaning to burn it all. Couldn't make myself do it." Mary Beth unwrapped the bundle. Inside were papers, letters, a deed, a birth certificate. Beneath those, a small dress, child-sized, with careful stitches and faded yellow flowers embroidered at the collar. And beneath that, wrapped in oilcloth, a pistol and a leather pouch heavy with coin. "That was my son's dress," Cole said, her voice gone rough. "Michael. He was 3 when they came." She touched the fabric with one scarred finger, so gentle it made Mary Beth's chest ache. His father, Mike Thomas, he'd been putting money aside, saving to buy more land, build a bigger house. Dreams, you know. The kind that don't survive. Why hide it? Because after they died, the ranch started failing. Cattle got sick, well ran low. Town started whispering that I was cursed, that God was punishing me for something, for dressing like a man, for not remarrying, for staying hard when they thought I should have broke. Cole's jaw tightened. Dalton came sniffing around, said the territory might need to seize the land for unpaid debts. Lies, all of it. But with enough men behind him, lies become law, so I hid what mattered. Kept it safe. Mary Beth understood then the hiding, the fear of losing the last pieces of what you loved. She reached deeper into the space, and her hand struck something else. Wood, carved smooth. She pulled it into the light. It was a sign, burned with letters in a careful hand. Colfax. Cole sucked in a breath. Where did you— It was in there. Mary Beth turned. Flip it over. On the back, more words. Property of S. Colfax. Promise to Catherine Marsh, 1867. Marsh, Mary Beth whispered. Abel Marsh, he was your kin? My brother. Cole's voice was hollow. Half-brother, really. Different mothers. When Thomas died, Abel helped me, gave me money, brought supplies. But he was sick himself. The drinking, the sadness. I think he knew he was dying. She took the sign with shaking hands. Samuel Colfax promised to buy Abel's land, promised to help him pay his debts, took his money and never came through. That's what killed Abel, really. The betrayal, the shame of it. The name fell between them like a stone into still water. Samuel Colfax, Mary Beth said slowly, the Reverend's son. Cole's head snapped up, gray eyes sharp. You know him. It wasn't a question. Mary Beth's hand moved to her belly, protective, instinctive. The baby kicked as if sensing the truth clawing its way toward light. She'd kept the secret for so long, 3 months of silence, of bearing the weight alone, of letting the town call her whore and witch, rather than speaking the name that would destroy her completely. But here, in the darkness behind the fireplace, with this scarred woman who'd lost everything and still chose mercy here, maybe, the truth could finally breathe. He's the father, Mary Beth whispered. Samuel Colfax is the father of my child. The words hung in the cold air. Outside, a coyote called, lonesome and distant. Cole sat back on her heels, her face cycling through shock, rage, and finally a terrible, knowing sadness. That's why you couldn't name him. His mother runs that town. His father speaks for God himself. He forced me. Behind the livery. Then he left, went east with gold and blessings while Mary Beth's voice cracked. Cole reached out and gripped her shoulder, firm and steady. While you carried the proof of his sin and they called it yours. Justice don't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it's just a woman standing, a fire burning clean, and one true word spoken loud enough to crack the silence. They came at dawn on the 14th day. Not Dalton alone, but the whole town. It seemed wagons and horses, men with rifles, women with hard eyes, the Reverend and his wife at the front like generals leading a righteous war. Cole stood on her porch, Mary Beth beside her, both of them dressed and ready. Between them, laid out on the weathered wood, were the papers, the sign, the proof of what Samuel Colfax had done not just to Mary Beth, but to Abel Marsh, to this whole valley that he'd bled dry with promises and lies. "Time's up, Cole," Dalton called, reining his horse. "Hand her over." "Not yet." Cole's voice carried clear across the dusty yard. "Got something needs saying first." Eunice Colfax urged her horse forward, face pinched tight. "You've harbored a witch and a whore. You've damned yourself. There's nothing left to say. There's always something left to say." Cole picked up the sign, held it high. "This belonged to your son, Reverend." This promise he made to Abel Marsh before he took his money and ran. The Reverend's face went pale. Around him the crowd stirred, uncertain. "And these?" Cole lifted the letters. Letters from Samuel to Abel, talking about the land deal, about the money, about how easy it was to fool a dying drunk. She paused, let the words sink in. "Abel Marsh was my brother. Your son destroyed him. Took everything and left him to rot in that barn where you found Mary Beth sleeping." "Lies," Eunice hissed, but her voice wavered. "Then there's this truth." Cole turned to Mary Beth, nodded once. "Permission. Release." Mary Beth stepped forward. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, feeling the child move innocent, blameless, deserving more than the shame it had been wrapped in since conception. Her voice shook at first, then steadied, growing stronger with each word. Samuel Colfax is the father of my child. He forced himself on me 3 months before he left town. I never laid with darkness. I never cursed no one. I just carried the sin of a man too coward to claim it. The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos shouting, denials, Eunice screaming that Mary Beth was a liar, that her son was godly and good. But there were other voices too, quieter ones, women's voices, saying they'd wondered, saying Samuel had looked at them too long, touched too familiar, saying they'd been afraid to speak. Enough. It was the thin woman from the crowd that first day, the one whose son had spoken for Mary Beth. She stepped forward, trembling but determined. I believe her. I believe because I know what it costs to tell a truth like that, and I know what it costs to stay silent. An old man, a rancher named Hastings, spat tobacco and nodded. Samuel Colfax owed me money too, never paid. I figured it was just bad luck, but now. The crowd fractured, certainty crumbling into doubt, doubt cracking into anger redirected at its proper target. Cole built a fire in the yard while they argued a small one, contained in a ring of stones. She fed it kindling. Then the Colfax sign, watching the wood blacken and curl, the burned letters turning to ash. Mary Beth knelt beside her, untied the rope she'd kept from that first day, the rope that had marked her wrists, branded her as guilty. Together they fed it to the flames. What happens now? Mary Beth asked quietly. Now you survive, Cole said. Now you raise that baby and you tell them they came from strength, not shame. You tell them their mama stood when the world wanted her on her knees. Dalton finally restored order, his face grim. The Reverend and his wife left in their wagon, backs rigid with fury and humiliation, the crowd parting for them but no longer with respect, with suspicion now, with anger. There would be no trial in Silver Falls. There would be questions instead, investigations, letters sent east to find Samuel Colfax and drag him back to account for his debts and his violence. As the crowd dispersed, Mary Beth felt the baby kick again, strong and insistent, life demanding space, demanding future. Cole helped her inside, sat her by the rebuilt fire. From the hidden space behind the hearth, she pulled the leather pouch of coin Thomas's savings, Michael's inheritance, the last piece of a dream that had died with them. This is yours now, Cole said, pressing it into Mary Beth's hands. For the baby, for starting somewhere new or staying if you want. Your choice. I can't. You can. You will. Cole's scarred hands closed over Mary Beth's. We survive, girl. That's what women like us do. We survive and we make sure the next ones have it easier. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning off the morning cold. Mary Beth walked to the porch, looked out at the land hard, unforgiving, beautiful in its harsh way. Her wrists still bore the marks of the rope, faint purple lines that would fade to white scars. Proof. Evidence of what she'd endured and outlasted. She knelt and found a smooth stone from the yard, carried it to the fire pit where the rope had burned. With a sharp rock, she scratched into it. M.C. 1872. Still here. She buried it at the base of the porch post, a marker for no one but herself and whatever came after. Cole stood in the doorway, watching, a ghost of something like peace crossing her weathered face. That night, they sat together by the fire, two women, one with child, one with ghosts, both with scars that told stories of surviving what should have killed them. They didn't speak much. Didn't need to. The crackling flames said enough, the way warmth always speaks to those who've known true cold. They say the devil hides his works in plain sight, but maybe salvation does too in the kindness of strangers, in the courage of one true word, in the stubborn refusal to die when the world insists you should. Mary Beth Carver stayed. in that valley, raised her daughter strong and unashamed. Cole lived another 20 years, died in her sleep with her boots off for once. And the stone Mary Beth buried, still there, they say, beneath that porch post, whispering to anyone who'll listen, I survived. I survived. I'm still here. What would you have buried? What stone would mark your standing? If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another tale from the dust, blood, and resilience of the Wild West. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're first to hear the next legend stories of outlaws, survivors, and souls who refuse to break. Drop a comment below. Which moment hit you hardest? Would you have stood with Cole? What stone would you bury to mark your survival? Like this video if Mary Beth's story deserved to be told. Share it with someone who needs to hear a story about standing tall when the world wants you on your knees.